Hi, this is Abe, and in this video I'm going to talk about the not null constraint in Oracle Database. I'll look at the syntax and then run through an example. So null is the absence of information or data that is unknown. The not null constraint is very simple. When applied to a column, it ensures that for any row that is added to the table, the column on which the not null constraint is applied shall always be provided with a value. So looking at the syntax, there's a couple ways that you can declare the not null constraints. One is through the create table and then in line with the column name. And the other is through the alter table statement using the modify with the column name. Both of these methods here are inline. I mentioned that up here. It only works with inline declarations. So out of line declarations for not null constraints do not work. Now keep in mind, by default, all columns allow null values when first created. You must apply a not null constraint or an equivalent to a column to require data for that column. Now when I say an equivalent, I mean there are other ways to require data in a column, such as using the primary key constraint, which I've talked about in a previous video, so check that out if you'd like. If you apply a primary key constraint on a column, you do not need to also apply a not null constraint. But if there's no primary key constraint for a given column, the not null constraint will ensure that any rows added to that table will include a value for that particular column. Now I've already got my SQL Developer application open. I have a connection to my database called XEHR, which I've set up in a previous video. I'm going to use the HR account, which is some sample data that I've been playing around with. And I'm going to add the not null constraint as part of table creation right here using our first example. And as you can see, I'm adding the not null constraint to the status column, and I'm naming my constraint. Again, it's always good practice to name those as opposed to having them system generated, which might not make sense if you're looking at those afterwards. I'm going to run that statement, and table vendors created. If I just do a refresh, there's my vendors table, and you could see the constraint has been added. So that's one way to create the not null constraint with table creation. Now if I wanted to add a constraint to a column that's already been created, I could use the alter table command, and in this case alter table vendors, modify vendor name. I'm going to basically add the not null constraint to the vendor name column, naming it vendor underscore name underscore NN, not null. I'll run that statement. This is table vendors altered. Now if I go back to the vendors table and do a refresh on that data and look at constraints, you can see it added the vendor name and then constraint. So there you have it. We talked about the not null constraint, went through an example, and verified our results. I'll be posting these scripts to my blog, which I'll link to in the description box below. Hope you liked the video. Please subscribe, like, and share, and see you later.